Organisms and Population, Part 3. In this video, let us look at some of the interactions that are seen among the populations in the nature. The population interactions are of three categories, namely neutral interaction, negative interaction, and positive interaction. Neutral interaction. They neither harm nor benefit the interacting population. Example, rat and rabbit living together in the same piece of grassland, and yet they do not compete with each other, as a result of which neither rat nor the rabbit are getting harmed or harming each other. Negative interaction. Of the two interacting populations, one is harmed, the other may or may not be benefited. Negative interactions are also called antagonistic interactions, and the different types of negative interactions are predation, competition, parasitism, and commensalism. Now let us have a look at each of them briefly with examples. It is the act of capturing, killing, and eating. The organism which does the act of predation is called a predator. The second organism which gets killed is called the prey. For example, lion eating a deer. Lion is the predator and deer becomes the prey. Competition. It is the interaction or reciprocal action involving contest between the individuals or group of individuals for the same resource if it is in short supply. Example for such resources would be food, water, space, light, etc. There is a reduction in the growth and reproduction of competing individuals. Now, different kinds of competitions can be seen. One is amongst the species and one is between the species. Intraspecific competition is the contest among the individuals of the same species for one or more common resources. Interspecific competition is a contest among the members of different species for the same resource, which can be food, shelter, minerals, water, light, etc. The phenomenon where one species occupying a specific niche in the habitat excluding other species from the same is known as Gauss's principle or principle of competitive exclusion. It is not essential that it occurs between the related species. Example, the Ebbington tortoise became extinct in Galapagos Islands within a decade of an introduction of goats. Apparently, goats are better browsers than tortoise. The third type of competition you see is interference competition. The feeding efficiency of a species is reduced due to the irritating, interfering, or inhibitory presence of another species. Parasitism. It is an interaction in which an organism of small size called the parasite obtains nourishment from an organism which is generally larger, and it is called the host and spends a part or whole of its life on or inside the body of the host. Parasites parasitize the host through the following ways, like reaching the host directly in case of ectoparasites, or through contaminated food and water, or contact with infected organisms, or by boring through the skin, or through animal bites. Parasites have evolved special adaptations like loss of unnecessary sense organs, presence of adhesive organs or suckers to cling to the host, loss of digestive system, and high reproductive capacity. Now let us look at the two kinds of parasites. Parasites that feed on the external surface of the hosts are called the ectoparasites. Example, lice and ticks. Marine fishes are infested with ectoparasite called copypods, and Cuscuta is a plant parasite. Parasites that live inside the host body at different sites are called endoparasites. The life cycles of the endoparasites are more complex because of their extreme specialization. Their morphological and anatomical features are greatly simplified while emphasizing their reproductive potential. Now, there is another kind of parasitism which is very fascinating, and it is called brood parasitism, and it is observed in the birds. So, it is a parasitism is seen wherein the parasite bird lays its egg in the nest of its host and the host incubates them. For example, cuckoo bird laying its egg in the nest of the crow, and the crow thinks it is its own egg and starts brooding the eggs of the cuckoo. and the crow will realize only on hatching that she has brooded the cuckoo's eggs and not the crow's eggs. Commensalism, an interaction by which living beings do not allow other organisms to flourish nearby. Example, smoother crops do not allow the weeds to grow near. Example, sunflower, sorghum, barley, walnut, roots and hulls of black walnut, which is also called Juglans regia, produce a chemical called juglone, and this affects the growth of tomato, apple, and alfalfa. Silver oak, that is Grevillea robusta, produces a chemical from its root which does not allow its own seed to germinate. Trichoderma inhibits the growth of aspergillus. Osmum sanctum, that is tulsi, inhibits the growth of other plants around it. Now look at the positive interactions. The interactions that are beneficial to at least one of the two competing organisms is considered to be positive interaction. The other organism may be benefited or not, but never or seldom harmed. The types of positive interactions are scavenging, commensalism, proto cooperation, and mutualism. Scavenging. It is the phenomenon of feeding on the flesh of dead animals or corpse. The corpse eaters are called scavengers. Example, vulture, carrion beetle. Though hyenas and jackals are predators, they also obtain their food through scavenging. Now, what are the advantages of scavenging? It provides food to several animals, prevents wastage of food, it's a quick means to dispose of dead bodies, keeps the environment clean, clears space for occupation of new generation of organisms. Due to scavenging, the organic matter is made into finer particles for decomposers to act upon. Commensalism. It's an interaction between the individuals of two different species in which one is benefited while the other remains unaffected. The organism which is benefited is called a commensal, and the one that provides the benefit to the commensal is called the host. Now let us look at some of the interesting examples of commensalism. Pilot fish and shark. Pilot fish follows the shark and eats the leftovers. So here the pilot fish is getting a free travel while the shark is neither getting affected nor it is benefited. Arctic fox and the seal. Jackals and lions. Arctic fox follows the seals while jackals follow lions and tigers to eat the leftovers. Polyox and Ketopteris. Polyox is a lives in the U-shaped burrow of Ketopteris, getting both oxygen and food from water circulated by beating appendages by Ketopteris. Suckerfish and shark. Suckerfish gets attached by its holdfast to the shark. Suckerfish gets transported to various places along with the shark to get food and also protection due to its association with the shark. Though the shark does not get any benefit, suckerfish is benefited. Pheriaster and Cucumeria. Pheriaster is a small fish which lives in the cloaca of sea cucumber for shelter and fecal matter. Epiphytes, these are the autotrophs which grows on the surface of the other plants. The attachment is only for the space. And Vanda is an orchid is an epiphyte. That's an example. E. coli and in the human large intestine. It lives in the human being's large intestine for getting shelter and food from the fecal matter. Clownfish and sea anemones. Clownfish lives near the mouth of the sea anemone and thus gets protected from its predators. Barnacles and whales. Barnacles are found attached to the surface of the whale and this provides the shelter. Proto cooperation. It's a facultative, mutually beneficial relationship that develops between the individuals of two interacting populations. Example, sea anemone and hermit crab. Hermit crab removes the sedentary sea anemone from its place of attachment over the rock and fixes it over the surface of its molluscan home. Sea anemone provides camouflage and protection from predators to hermit crab. Oxpecker and rhinoceros. Red-billed oxpecker and yellow-billed oxpecker feed upon the ticks, leech and other ectoparasites found on the body of the rhinoceros. Plover and crocodile. Leeches often enter the mouth of the crocodile sucking the blood. Plover enters the mouth of the crocodile and feeds upon the leech. So plover is also called crocodile bird. mutualism or symbiosis. It's an obligatory, physically close, and mutually beneficial relationship that occurs between two interacting organisms. Both the interacting organisms fail to show normal growth in the absence of their association. So, in mutualism, the association has to be obligatory. Example, lichens. They are dual organisms formed by an algae and fungus. Fungus will provide the raw materials to the algae, and algae, with the help of its pigments, will be able to photosynthesize and supply the food to the fungus. Termites and trichonympha. Trichonympha campanula lies in the hindgut of the termites, and it secretes cellulase. The cellulase enzyme helps in digestion of cellulose. The digested product is utilized by trichonympha and the termite. Ruminants and cellulose digestion. The rumen part of the chambered stomach of ruminant contains a number of cellulose metabolizing bacteria like Ruminococcus flaviceans, etc. Symbiotic nitrogen fixation. Rhizobium species lives in the roots of legumes, forming nodules. Inside the nodules of bacteria perform the nitrogen fixation. Mycorrhiza is a mutually beneficial association between roots of plants and fungi like Rhizopogon, Amanita, Rhizoctonia, etc. Yucca and yucca moth. Yucca is pollinated by a moth called Prunuba eucacella. Insect deposits egg in the ovary of the yucca flower. On entering the flower, moth undergoes rotational movement and thus deposits the pollen grain over the hollow stigma of the same flower. Now let us summarize. The neutral interaction. Here the effect on species 1 is 0, effect on species 2 is 0. In negative interaction competition, both the species 1 and species 2, it is going to be negative. In predation, it is positive for the predator and negative for the prey. In parasitism, it is positive for the parasite and negative for the host. In amensalism, one species get affected whereas the other it remains unaffected, so it is 0. In positive interaction scavenging, for one of the species it is positive, for the other species it is not affected, so it is 0. In commensalism, it is positive for one species and 0 for the other. In proto cooperation, it is positive for both the species, and for mutualism, it is again positive for both the species. The only difference between proto cooperation and mutualism is that in proto cooperation, the association is not obligatory, but in mutualism, the association is obligatory. Without the other one will not be able to survive successfully.